for community goods and great barbecue. That's what you'll find at the Coker Market, located in Coker, Alabama at the four-way intersection off of County Road 140. Their hours of operation are Wednesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. until 7 p.m., and their menu items include the Midnight, which is smoked ham, smoked pork, Swiss cheese, Creole mustard, mayonnaise, and a pickle, grilled on French bread. That sandwich is absolutely amazing. Make sure you go and check out the Coker Market right there at the four-way intersection in Coker for amazing food and community goods. You are about to be locked in on the Stingray Show, and coming up on this edition, we're going to be talking about college basketball this past weekend and touch on the standings and the rankings of college baseball. And I will be joined by none other than national recruiting analyst Tom Luganbill to get his take on college football and the UFL that starts in less than a month. That's all ahead on this edition of the Stingray Show. Got a lot to cover, guys, so let's get things rocking and rolling.
Hi, this is Tim Brando with a reminder. Those of you on Tide 100.9, look out. You're about to feel the buzz of Stingray.
This is Stephen Ray, a.k.a. Stingray, coming to you live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
I'm Heath Hopkins. I'm here in DeSoto County, Mississippi, right outside of Memphis, Tennessee. You know, Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you feel that responsibility to pay it forward and give some kid a chance coming up in the ranks, kind of like Tony did for you?
Why you think I'm talking to Stingray tonight?
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
No, I mean, look, no.
Hey, Stingray, here's the deal. When you get involved with Texas, it's like getting married to a stripper. and let me explain this. It looks good. It's kind of sexy on the surface. Yeah. But then you get the baggage, you get the drama, you get all that eventually comes with it. And that's what you get with Texas, and that's what the Big 12 learned.
And Heath, any thoughts on our show moving forward?
Hey, to everyone in Tuscaloosa listening here on Tide 100.9. With the Stingray Show, if you don't like it, you better learn to love it, because it's the best show going today, baby. Woo!
Citizens of West Alabama, have you heard the news? The Bank of Moundville, which was established way back in 1907, offers personal loans of all sizes, unsecured and secured, with competitive interest rates. You can contact them today at 205-371-2227. Once again, that is the Bank of Moundville, 205-371-2227, or go by and see them in downtown Moundville. They are an equal housing lender and a member of the FDIC. And ladies and gentlemen, with all of that, I want to welcome you inside another edition of the Stingray Show right here on Tide 100.9. And I hope all of you had a wonderful weekend out there, even though Alabama did lose on the road at Kentucky. I'm going to jump into that here in just a minute. But before I do that, I do want to let you guys know, and I'm going to start with National Day of Today. And National Day of Today, it is National Set a Good Example Day. It is also National Tell a Fairy Tale Day and National Pistachio Day, getting into the realm of food. So once again, it is National Tell a Fairy Tale Day, it is National Set a Good Example Day, and National Pistachio Day. So make sure that you partake in a lot of pistachios today on this day. Now, getting to the realm of college basketball and college baseball, it was not a good weekend for ranked teams out there, as we actually had a bunch of upsets, including Wake Forest upsetting Duke at home. And because of that, there is a lot of debate in and around the basketball world right now about court storming, because a player from the University of Duke was injured when he collided with a fan there as the fans were storming the court, and he was trying to leave the court. So there's a lot of big discussion this week about, should we permanently ban court storming thing there in college basketball? Some people say yes, Other people say no. And I think a lot of people are erring on the side of caution that, hey, if you do want to storm the court, you need a good minute to minute and a half to get the players and the coaches off of the court before the fans actually storm the field and storm the court there, because that is a major issue. And this is the second time this season in college basketball that a female and a male have both been injured by fans coming onto the court. Earlier this year, Caitlin Clark, the phenomenal women's basketball player for Iowa, was injured and knocked out of breath when a fan injured her coming onto the court earlier this year in the Ohio State game, when Ohio State knocked off Iowa up there in Columbus, Ohio. And then, of course, this weekend, you had the incident there with Wake Forest injuring a Duke player when they came onto the court, and that is a major, major issue right now in college basketball. Also, like I talked about off the top of the show, Alabama goes on the road and gets absolutely creamed by Kentucky at Rupp Arena, 117-95, and Alabama has now lost 6 games in a row versus ranked teams on the road dating back to last season. So once again, the Alabama Crimson Tide have now lost 6 road games, 6 consecutive road games versus ranked opponents. That is a trend to keep up with as we move closer and closer to tournament time, not only the SEC tournament, but also the big dance there in the NCAA. Also this weekend, you had Texas A&M get drilled in the revenge game versus Tennessee, as Tennessee knocked off Texas A&M up there 86-51. And if you will remember, about a month ago, Tennessee got drilled when they went on the road to College Station. So that was definitely a revenge game for the Tennessee Volunteers up there at Thompson Bowling Arena up there in Knoxville. Now, also switching gears to baseball from this weekend, Alabama, of course, swept Valparaiso, and a bunch of those games this weekend were ruled games in which Alabama absolutely had an offensive showing on all 3 of those games this weekend versus Valparaiso. And I am about to go through with you guys right now the baseball standings and the baseball rankings that came out earlier this week from D1 Baseball. Wake Forest still is the number 1 team right now in the country, followed by 3 SEC teams. You've got Arkansas at 5-2. You've got LSU at 7-1, and the Florida Gators at 5-1. Arkansas, number 2. Number 3, LSU, and number 4, Florida. Going on down the list, you've got number 7, Texas A&M, right now at 7-0, and they are ranked 7th in the country. At number 8, you've got the Tennessee Volunteers at 7-1. You've got Vanderbilt sitting there at number 9 in the country at 5-3. Then going on down the list, you've got the 16th ranked Alabama Crimson Tide with an undefeated record right now of 8-0. Then next up, you've got South Carolina at 19th at 7-1, and rounding out the top 25, newcomer to the top 25 this week, the Auburn Tigers at 6-1, right there at number 23 in the country. And if you are wondering about the overall standings in the SEC, Georgia and South Carolina are number 1 and number 2 over in the Eastern Division. Georgia has a record of 7-0, and South Carolina is right behind them with a record of 7-1. And then over here in the West, you've got Alabama sitting there at 8-0, and you've got Texas A&M sitting there at 7-0. And unfortunately for any of the Magnolia State fans, over there for Ole Miss and Mississippi State. Both of them are at the bottom of the SEC right now, as both teams are 4-4 on the year, and both teams have a record of 2-2 at home. So once again, Ole Miss and Mississippi State are both sitting there at the bottom of the SEC at 4-4. So guys, I'm going to take a very short break, and when I come back, I am going to be joined by none other than national recruiting analyst Tom Luganville. That's on the other side of the break. And then later on, we will touch on NASCAR. That's on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Stingray Show. I will be right back. Citizens of West Alabama, have you heard the news? The Bank of Moundville, which was established way back in 1907, offers personal loans of all sizes, unsecured and secured, with competitive interest rates. You can contact them today at 205-371-2227. Once again, that is the Bank of Moundville, 205-371-2227, or go by and see them in downtown Moundville. They are an equal housing lender and a member of the FDIC. Do you guys like to fish? I know I do, and if you have a pond or lake in your backyard that needs stocking of fish, you need to contact biologist Jeff Bagwell with Honey Hole Fisheries. He can help you stock your lake with bluegill, largemouth bass, and hybrid striped bass. You can get in touch with Jeff Bagwell and Honey Hole Fisheries at 205-799-0192. Once again, that is Honey Hole Fisheries, 205-799-0192. Contact Mr. Jeff Bagwell today and let him help you build the lake of your dreams. Do you guys dream about owning a home or a condominium down on the beautiful beaches of Alabama, say Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, or maybe even Fairhope? Then let me tell you about First Class Real Estate South Home Group's owner, Celeste Hagler. She has brokers down there in the beautiful beaches of Alabama to help you purchase the home of your dreams and to live where you love in the state of Alabama. You can contact Celeste Hagler at 205-861-5698. Contact Celeste Hagler today to help you live where you loved in the state of Alabama.
The best sports talk in the state. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Welcome back inside the Stingray Show. Hope all is well with you guys. And now we are about to get to our very special guest on this edition of the Stingray Show. And personally, one of my all-time favorite returning guests. He is the national recruiting analyst for ESPN and about to start with the upcoming UFL season of broadcasting. And ladies and gentlemen, please help us welcome back to the Stingray Show, the national recruiting analyst for ESPN, Mr. Tom Luganville. Tom, how are things going with you, sir?
They are going fantastic, man. I'm doing really well. I hope you are too. And kind of in between the college football season, got a little recruiting coming up, and then UFL. It's funny too, because for the UFL, for me, this will be my fourth foray, because I coached in the 2001 XFL, was on the sidelines for the 2020 XFL before COVID happened, and then the 2023 XFL, I was in the booth, and then I'll be in the booth once again for the UFL starting the last week in March. So looking forward to it. So
I want to get your take on something that happened last week in college football. Obviously, the 5-7 rule was voted unanimously. Your thoughts on that broke last week?
Well, listen, I think the big winner, and it's Notre Dame, because they don't belong to a conference, so they almost virtually guarantee themselves potentially a home game each and every time. I mean, I think it's a little bit flawed in the sense that, let's just say that you could have, let's say an Alabama beats a Georgia, so Alabama wins the conference, they get the bye. Georgia ends up getting the home game. So there's something a little bit off with that to me. But I listen, I'm fine with it. I don't think everybody wants a perfect system.
right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants it to benefit everybody equally. It's never going to do that. I think each and every year going forward now, we're going to continue to model ourselves after what we saw in the previous year, see what works, see what doesn't work, see what's tweaked, and then go from there.
So, Tom, I do want to ask you about this too. How surprised are you, because you cover college football, the Chip Kelly move going from UCLA as the head coach to the offensive coordinator up at Ohio State? Your thoughts on that move of Chip Kelly?
Well, what I think it's reflective of is a system right now that is extremely flawed. I think you could use the phrase broken. And depending on where you are at within the system we are currently in, you may not have the advantages that maybe you should have or that you think you will need to compete at a high level. And what I think this very simply came down to was UCLA is serious about football, but I know how serious they are about truly winning a national championship, being a college football playoff participant, because what it will take from an infrastructure, from a collective, from a resources, from a name, image, and likeness perspective is going to have to be on par with those of an Alabama, a Georgia, an Ohio State, a Texas. And quite honestly, I don't think he felt UCLA was committed to going there. And so you kind of find yourself in a position where you're constantly paddling upstream because nobody's playing with the same set of rules in all of this. And I think that's the one thing that, and coaches are receiving a lot of heat right now, and they're saying, well, don't complain about it. You're getting paid a lot of money. Deal with it, whether it's the transfer portal, whether it's name, image, and likeness. Well, on the surface, that sounds fair, but you're asking them to do that in a world where there's no rules. There are no guidelines. There's no procedure. There's certainly no governing or policing rules because there are no rules to govern and police. And so what they want is structure and order, and they want whatever it's going to be, whatever college football is going to become. They want to know that they have at least a level playing field as best as possibly can be to compete in that realm. And right now, there is none of that. What we have right now would be the equivalent of if the NFL allowed year-round free agency and any player within the league to break a contract after 1 year and go somewhere else. Well, why don't we have that? Because that's not structured. You have to have guidelines. You have to have rules. And guess what they did? They came together and they collectively bargained. And that's why they have a structure and rules and they have a process in place for player movement. All right. That's why a Green Bay in their small little tiny market can compete with the Dallas Cowboys. All right. Because once you put everybody into that same boat of rules and regulations, now they at least have a fighting chance. Okay. That's not what we have right now in college football. What administrators and coaches want in college football is there to be some order so everybody has somewhat of a fighting chance. The biggest problem in college football right now is, Stephen, it's not name, image, and likeness. It's not the transfer portal. It's tampering.
Yeah.
It's tampering for the sake of the transfer portal. Up until this last Friday, when the news came out about the NCAA, the biggest problem was addressing how we're going to police recruiting in name, image, and likeness. And clearly that looks like there isn't going to be any policing of that either now. All right. So now that furthers the mess. And we're not putting the pace back in the tube. So that's why Chip Kelly, Jeff Hafley at Boston College. I mean, you're at Boston College. How are you supposed to compete with Clemson or Michigan or even somebody like Virginia Tech or somebody like North Carolina? How are you supposed to compete with them and win enough games on the field when you're not playing with the same deck of cards? And that's really, I think, where the frustration comes in. Because, again, not everybody has Alabama's resources. Not everybody's going to have Ohio State's resources. And unless you have those, how are you supposed to close the gap?
So, Tom, I do want to get your take on this as well. A couple of months ago, Nick Saban, the GOAT, decided to retire. Your thoughts on that news and talk about the legacy of Nick Saban there in college football, please.
Well, let's start off with the legacy, because I think that in hiring Nick Saban, you have to give Mal Moore a lot of credit, because leading up to that hire, everybody was so concerned about making sure you had a coach that had a tie to Bear Bryant.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not that coach was the best option or not. right? So they initially tried to do that with Mike Price, and that gets all screwed up, all right? And Mike Price has won a lot of football games at Washington State, all right? Bad fit. Then you finally say, you know what? Let's go out and get Nick Saban, all right? We have every resource that LSU has. If he can do that at LSU, he can do it here. And then on top of it, he was the one coach, or should I say personality, that there was not going to be anybody walking into his office telling him how the program was going to be run. Oh, well, Bear did it this way. Well, this is how we used to do it. That came to a screeching halt.
Yep.
So to start off, you got the right personality, the right coach with the right process-oriented model for how to get it going. You blend that with all of the resources that Alabama has that they've devoted to football. And over the course of time, in his first 10 years there, applications for enrollment went over 50%. They went up over 50%. Do you know what that means for commerce and for capitalism within the community, on campus, small businesses, all because you're winning in football? So that side of it probably doesn't even get talked about enough. Then I think from a legacy perspective, the other thing that has got to be admired is that he did this and his staff, in arguably the most difficult period of our time when it comes to exposure and access that the internet and radio and television and podcasts and all of the things that are out there now that can interfere with your ability to build a program. He did it anyway. And it used to be able to hide players in recruiting, and there was no cameras all the time, and there might have been a weekly radio show. There was no internet. There was no exposure. There was none of that stuff. So doing it when you've got all this, and I'll use the Nick Saban phrase, clutter all around, right? And still getting kids to focus on what matters, what's right in front of them, the task at hand, and performance, and being performance-oriented and production-oriented in everything that you do each and every day. That's hard to do with 18 to 22-year-old kids. And the better you get, the harder it becomes, because everybody's patting them on the back all the time, telling them how good they are. And guess what young people want to do? They're going to fall victim to believing all of that. So then they start believing all of that, and now all of a sudden they don't perform as well. And somehow he was able to overcome that in terms of getting kids to perform at their best when people are constantly telling them how good they are. As I watched him over the last 2 years, and this is my personal observation, he was tired. I think his health was fine, but he was tired, and he wasn't tired from X's and O's. He was tired because of what the sport has become in relationship to the constant player movement, the transfer portal, name, image, and likeness, the fact that there have been no rules. It just, at his age, I just don't think he wanted to deal with any of it, and that's fair. Go out on top. You just were in the college football playoff. You've accomplished something that probably nobody ever will again in their lifetime, maybe at the collegiate level, football or basketball. And I just think he was tired. He needed to do something else.
So, Tom, hold that thought, because when we come back from the other side of the break, we're going to continue the interview with you and talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide moving forward. That's on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Stingray Show. We will be right back. Strange Brew Coffee House continues to roll out brand new drinks, including the Yosemite, which is white chocolate and roasted marshmallow. Doesn't that sound amazing? You can find Strange Brew at 1101 University Boulevard, right there on the Strip at the University of Alabama campus. And hey, did you know that you can get Strange Brew delivered to your door? Check out StrangeBrewCoffeehouse.com for all the Strange Brews bags of coffee, K-Cups, mugs, shirts, and a whole lot more right there at StrangeBrewCoffeehouse.com. Are you guys in the mood for community goods and great barbecue? That's what you'll find at the Coker Market, located in Coker, Alabama at the four-way intersection off of County Road 140. Their hours of operation are Wednesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. until 7 p.m., and their menu items include the Midnight, which is smoked ham, smoked pork, Swiss cheese, Creole mustard, mayonnaise, and a pickle, grilled on French bread. That sandwich is absolutely amazing. Make sure you go and check out the Coker Market right there at the four-way intersection in Coker for amazing food and community goods. Your life can change on a dime, and if you are relocating for your job up to the Rocket City of Huntsville, the fastest growing city in the state of Alabama, you need to contact Celeste Hagler of First Class Real Estate South Home Group. She has brokers all over North Alabama to help you get settled with buying a new home in North Alabama. You can contact her at 205-861-5698. Once again, that is Celeste Hagler, 205-861-5698. 5698. Contact Celeste Hagler today to live where you love in the state of Alabama, even in the Rocket City of Huntsville.
Catch every game and every moment right here. This is your home of Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Strange Brew Coffee House continues to roll out brand new drinks, including the Yosemite, which is white chocolate and roasted marshmallow. Doesn't that sound amazing? You can find Strange Brew at 1101 University Boulevard, right there on the strip at the University of Alabama campus. And hey, did you know that you can get Strange Brew delivered to your door? Check out StrangeBrewCoffeehouse.com for all the Strange Brew's bags of coffee, K-Cups, mugs, shirts, and a whole lot more right there at StrangeBrewCoffeehouse.com. Welcome back inside the Stingray Show. Hope all is well with you. Our guest this evening is Tom Luganville, and before the break, we were talking about the legacy of Coach Nick Saban, and now that, Coach DeBoer has been hired at Alabama, Tom, give us your thoughts on how the career of Kellen DeBoer will be right here at Alabama moving forward?
Well, I think a lot of the answer to that question depends upon the willingness of the Alabama faithful to understand that with change, all right, comes probably a shock to the system of what they become accustomed to for 17 years. And the approach may be a little bit different. The personalities may be a little bit different. Maybe you don't have as much early success as you're accustomed to. And let's not forget, Nick Saban didn't have a ton of early success either in those 07 and 08s where they got to 09, right? And it was a process. The good news is that it's been such a strong culture and foundation of dealing with expectation and the expectation to win and perform at a high standard. The Coach DeBoer and his staff are coming into a scenario where motivating kids to perform at their best isn't going to be foreign to those kids because they've become accustomed to knowing what's going to be asked of them, what the standard is, and what's going to be accepted, maybe moreover. I think from a sheer personality perspective, Kalen DeBoer is a lot different than Nick Saban. Right? Nick Sheridan and Kane Womack is a lot different than, let's just say, Kevin Steele or Tommy Reese or Lane Kiffin or Sark and some of the assistant coaches. Different doesn't necessarily mean wrong. Different doesn't necessarily mean a decrease or a lack of production. It just means that the approach, because the personality is different, is likely going to make a difference within the locker room, within the team meeting room, and within those position meetings. Because Kalen DeBoer knows more than anything else, he can't be Nick Saban. He's got to be Kalen DeBoer. And Kalen DeBoer and that coaching staff probably are acutely aware of just how important that is. At the same time, understanding the expectation that comes with taking over a program that for the last 17 years has transcended college athletics. And so, you always hear that saying, don't follow the man, follow the man that followed the man. Well, somebody had to take the job, right?
Yeah.
And at least if you're Greg Byrne and you're the administration there, you're saying we've at least gone out and we have targeted and hired a guy who is a proven winner, going all the way back to Sioux Falls in Division II football, has won everywhere he's been. So there's a pedigree there. And again, it may be done in a different manner and in a different fashion. And if you struggle a little bit, it's going to be very easy for people to go, well, that's not how Nick Saban would have done it, or that's not what Alabama used to look like. That's invariably going to happen. You're not going to avoid that. So you've got to, as an Alabama fan, accept that there's going to be some differences.
So, Tom, let's go back and talk about the landscape of college football and the NCAA. Do you think we are ultimately going to get to the point to where we have a commissioner of college football? And if so, who are a couple of guys that you would like to see a commissioner of college football?
Well, I do think that we will eventually have a full breakaway from the NCAA, which got accelerated on Friday with the court case that came down on Tennessee and Virginia. And the NCAA, not only do they no longer really have any teeth, they don't even really have any bark. And so, yes, I think we will get there, Stephen. But I think before we get there, we have to figure out how to come to some common ground and create some law and order in the NIL transfer portal space, because as of right now, we have none. And in order to do that, there's really only one way. It is we're going to have to make them employees, them being the players. We're going to have to do everything possible to stay out of court. All right. And right now, until you decide to sign them to contracts that can and will be and have to be adhered to, have to have that will have performance standards that players will have to be accountable for. They won't be able to sit out bowl games. All right. They're not going to be able to sit out a college football playoff game. They're not going to be able to just move whenever they want to. Right. So before we get to having a commissioner of college football, we got to figure out what the college football model is going to look like and how we come to an agreement to where players are afforded freedoms that everybody agrees upon, but also the universities and the coaching staffs have some sense of policing and a strict set of guidelines and rules that everybody can come together and agree upon. And I go back to that NFL model. Can you imagine what the NFL would be if you just allowed players each and every year to leave and go wherever they wanted with no repercussion, no payback, no buyouts? Because I can't stand the argument when everybody says, well, the coaches, they get to leave with no repercussions. That's not true. They have major financial repercussions. And it's either falling back onto the university or in some cases, depending on how their contracts were written out, could fall upon themselves personally having to pay back some money. And so the whole player movement thing, okay, let's figure that out. The name, image, and likeness, how are we going to manage that? Let's figure that out. Let's sign these guys to contract. We'd have to figure out, how do we massage or combine or maybe even break away from the scholarship model to a full 1099 or W-2 or whatever we're going to do from an employment status? Do we blend the two? Do we say, okay, well, as part of your employment, we are going to provide you health insurance. We're going to provide you a 401k. We are going to provide you with options, deferred payment, life insurance, dental insurance, all of those sorts of things. Or are we going to say, nope, now that we've made you employees, we're going to pay you X amount of dollars and you're now responsible for all of that. And that doesn't come under the umbrella of a scholarship. So have to massage and work through that. But I think the biggest thing that the coaches want is they want the player, if you're going to have player movement and you're going to have name, image, and likeness, the player has to be able to be accountable for performing to a standard within that contract. Right now, they have no accountability to that contract. They can leave whenever they want. They have no performance standards because they can't put them in the contract because they're not employees. So once we figure out what this model is going to be by making them employees, then we got to make sure, we probably have to do this at the same time, figure out a way to govern it. And I would love to see a commissioner or a commission, or call it whatever you want, of college football, or even if it's college basketball, women's basketball, whatever the revenue producers are. But the one thing that has to happen within that structure is you have to put coaches on those committees because they're living this day to day. Right now, we have a bunch of administrators and people talking about, oh, well, how can we make change? How can we improve this? How can we improve that? And there's no coaches in the meetings. Like that makes zero sense to me. So, guys like Chris Peterson, I think are tremendous guys to look at. That you'd say, wow, okay, that would be a guy that's done an awful lot. He'd be one to look at. A Rick Neuheisel could be one that you could put back into play. He's got really strong opinions and really some ideas on name, image, and likeness and transfer portal. I mean, there's a bunch of guys out there. Dan Mullen, guys that are readily available that you could put in the room. Former ADs that were maybe former coaches are another group that you'd probably want to have a part of that process and come together to figure out how does not everybody's going to get everything they want in negotiation, right? But you got to be willing to come together on some concrete ideas that are non-negotiable, right? And one of those things would have to be tampering, because that's the biggest problem right now in college football is tampering. And it's happening every day. Nobody's policing it. Nobody even cares. And it's a huge destructive roster problem.
So, Tom, hold that thought, because we're up against our final break. And when we come back, I've got 2 questions left for you, and then we'll let you get out of here. That's on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Stingray Show. Be back in a flash.
On the next Inside the Locker Room with Coach Wimp Sanderson and Barry Sanderson.
Tune in Tuesdays, 7:30. We'll talk with Kevin Skarbinski. At 8:15, ESPN Game Days, Jay Billis will join us. We'll talk to Jay about the NCAA and look at game day coming in for the weekend.
Inside the Locker Room, weekdays 7 to 9 a.m. on Tide 100.9 and Tide100.9.com.
Since 1999, residents of Tuscaloosa has depended on this butcher shop and grocery store. I'm talking about South's Finest Meats. With their specialty meats and fresh to frozen bulk vegetables, you can prepare delicious home-cooked meals all week long. At South's Finest Meats, customer service is their number one priority, and when you shop with them, you can expect to be treated like an MVP. Go by and check out South's Finest Meats at 3201 10th Avenue right there in Tuscaloosa. South's Finest Meats, the official sponsor of the Stingray Show. Residents of Tuscaloosa, are you guys upsizing, downsizing, looking for college housing, or even relocating for your job right here to Tuscaloosa? If that's the case, then you need to contact Celeste Hagler, owner and operator of First Class Real Estate South Home Group. She can help you with the buying, selling, and investment needs throughout the state of Alabama. You can contact Celeste at 205-861-5698. Reach out to Celeste again at 205-861-5698 and schedule a consultation to discuss your real estate goals and to live where you love in the state of Alabama. Are you guys in the mood for community goods and great barbecue? That's what you'll find at the Coker Market, located in Coker, Alabama at the 4-way intersection off of County Road 140. Their hours of operation are Wednesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. until 7 p.m., and their menu items include the Midnight, which is smoked ham, smoked pork, Swiss cheese, Creole mustard, mayonnaise, and a pickle, grilled on French bread. That sandwich is absolutely amazing. Make sure you go and check out the Coker Market right there at the 4-way intersection in Coker for amazing food and community goods.
The flagship station for Alabama Crimson Tide sports, Tide 100.9, and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Since 1999, residents of Tuscaloosa has depended on this butcher shop and grocery store. I'm talking about South's Finest Meats. With their specialty meats and fresh to frozen bulk vegetables, you can prepare delicious home-cooked meals all week long. At South's Finest Meats, customer service is their number one priority, and when you shop with them, you can expect to be treated like an MVP. Go by and check out South's Finest Meats at 3201 10th Avenue right there in Tuscaloosa. South's Finest Meats, the official sponsor of the Stingray Show. Welcome back inside of our final segment right here on the Stingray Show. Our guest this evening is Tom Luginbill. Now, national recruiting analyst for ESPN. And Tom, I want to break away from talking about college briefly, if you would, going ahead and give us a preview of spring football that kicks off here March the 30th between, I think it is, Arlington and Birmingham in the brand new UFL. Give us your take on this brand new league, please.
Well, I think a lot of smart people got together at the conclusion of last season with the USFL and the XFL and realized that there's room for both to exist in a single entity. And by combining really the best from both leagues, from whether it be performance on the field, whether it be fan base, excitement, location of teams within the UFL. There are no teams in the UFL that are west of the state of Texas. You have obviously a huge appetite for football in the state of Alabama, in the state of Texas, in the state of Tennessee. The DC Defenders in the XFL have been a huge success. And so I thought it was kind of neat what they did is they put together the UFL, brought the best of both leagues, named one of the divisions the XFL and the other division the USFL. And those are going to be the two divisions. The reason why, to me, this is so important is there was no farm system for professional football. And there are a lot of really, really good football players out there, guys who've been All-Americans, guys who've been All-Conference, guys who've been drafted, guys who played in the NFL for 3 to 4 to 5 years that still have enough left in the tank. But the opportunity for players to play a full season, 10 games plus the playoffs, as opposed to signing an NFL futures contract and not really getting any better, is really important for the player. And I think the players and their representatives are starting to figure out that, man, I've been this close twice to making a roster. I got to get over that hump. Well, guess what? 10 games of 70 snaps a game or whatever it may be to help enhance your opportunity to get over that hump and make a 45 or 53-man roster in the NFL is really important. And we don't have that. We used to have it with NFL Europe. Then it was the first XFL in 2001. And hopefully this structure will be one that's here to stay because it's really important for players.
So, Tom, my final question for you in parting is, going back to college football, X's and O's, you've covered a ton of football games, but what is one rivalry that you have yet to have the opportunity to call that you are looking forward to calling it one day?
So I've had UCLA, USC. I had the big game with Michigan and Ohio State. What else? I've had Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, which was Bedlam, which we may not see that for a while. Because of the CBS contract previously, I've never had the opportunity to do the Iron Bowl because that's always been on CBS, and have not had the opportunity to. I've done Clemson, Florida State. That's kind of turned into a rivalry. I've done Florida State. I would love to one day somehow, some way, be involved in the Iron Bowl. Obviously, at ESPN and ABC, we're now taking over that SEC contract. I have not done Texas, Oklahoma. In the Cotton Bowl with Red River rivalry, which I think would be a great one. Obviously, done both of those teams an awful lot. But I've had the good fortune of being able to do so. I've done Oregon, Washington. I've done the Civil War with Oregon State. That was a lot of fun. So, I know some garner more attention than the others. But really the only big one I haven't at least had a chance to be on the field for has been Alabama and Auburn.
So, Tom, look, man, thank you for joining me to take time out of your schedule to do this. And please let everybody know, of course, where they can keep up with you on social media, and going ahead and feel free to tell everybody where they can watch you covering the UFL.
All right. So on social media, at Tom Luganville on Twitter, at Tom Luganville on Instagram, Real Tom Luganville on YouTube and TikTok as well. And then I'll be kicking off. I think my opening game is the 31st of March, which is a Sunday. So I'll be on that Sunday package in each and every week for 10 weeks on either ESPN or ABC, starting that last weekend in March. So looking forward to getting back in the booth and calling some more games.
So, dude, make sure that you enjoy it for all of us. Stay safe out there, and we will catch up later on down the road, my friend.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thank you. So, guys, we hope that you have thoroughly enjoyed the interview there with Tom Luginbill, the ESPN and national recruiting analyst. And, guys, before we leave, I do want to touch on something that happened yesterday because, of course, a lot of people down here in the South follow NASCAR. And yesterday, on Fox, it was the Atlanta race over there right outside downtown Atlanta. And that one was an amazing race if you did not catch it, because there were 10 caution flags on that race because of the speed and the handling. That was a major topic for a lot of the drivers going into that race, and the crashes happened starting on the second lap that took out 16 cars. And believe it or not, guys, at the end of that race in Atlanta yesterday, there were only 3 cars left on the track that were not involved in some sort of crash. It was an amazing race. It was a highly speed race over there. And of course, this weekend, they are at another very fast track out in Las Vegas at 2:30 Central Time for that amazing race, as the third NASCAR race of the season is this weekend, this Sunday at Las Vegas. But going back to last night, there was a 3-way runner-up right there at the finish line, and Suarez actually won the Atlanta race by 0.0003 points of a second as he hit the finish line right before Danny Hamlin and, of course, Kyle Busch. So both of those guys were right there on the finish line. It was a very, very, very close race, and it was definitely one that would have kept you on the edge of your seat. If you have the opportunity, make sure that you go back and you do watch the final lap of the Atlanta race yesterday, because that one was definitely adrenaline pumping and one way of awesomeness to start the NASCAR season. And of course, coming up later in April, they of course will be making their way right here to Alabama, to Talladega, and that race is going to be absolutely outstanding. And I will continue, guys, to keep you updated on the NASCAR races throughout the year, and hopefully I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we could potentially get Dale Earnhardt Jr. on the show before the Talladega race right here on the Stingray Show. That would be pretty awesome. So, guys, a quick little note before I head out here on the Stingray Show. Obviously, this week is filled with Alabama sports. We've got Alabama baseball at UAB tomorrow evening, and then Alabama basketball starts at 8 o'clock on Wednesday evening, and then Alabama is back in action in baseball on Friday. So the Stingray Show will only have a show this evening and on Thursday evening due to Alabama sports being right here on Tide 100.9. So the next time that you will hear my voice right here on the Stingray Show here on the radio will be on Thursday evening, when we will be touching base with Chris Lee to get his take on all things SEC baseball and SEC basketball as well. So, guys, that is going to wrap up this edition of the Stingray Show. We hope that you have thoroughly enjoyed it with Tom Luginbill joining us on this edition. And, guys, once again, make sure you tune in for another Stingray Show, not until Thursday, because of Alabama sports right here on Tide 100.9. We hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your week, and that we will have a lot of interesting things moving forward in the season of baseball and basketball. And we will be right back here on Thursday evening to discuss all of that. We will see you guys on down the line, and on down the line is Thursday evening, guys. I am out. See you guys then, right back here on the Stingray Show with Chris Lee.